Hello, my chicklets. Thank you for stopping by. I am so excited to read this story for you guys. This one means a lot to me. It does have asexual Remus in it, which just has always been a favorite trope of mine. But on top of that, this one really goes into some internalized acephobia, and it is heartbreaking and comforting at the same time. This defines Hurt No Comfort in my mind. I do hope y'all enjoy it, and let me read to you, wherever this is going, it's going to be okay. Remus knew where this was going, and not because he felt horny or because he was turned on or because he'd been waiting for the opportunity to get into this guy's pants. No, he knew because they always acted like this. They'd stroke their hand up and down Remus's thigh, they'd kiss his cheek or his neck, they'd compliment him or say something juicy that he'd normally laugh at, joke along with, actually, but not now, because he knew he wasn't going to like where this was going, and it sucked, pun intended, because his dates with Janus had been so fun. They had laughed together, gossiped about old classmates together, reminisced about their childhoods together. Janus was charismatic, carried himself confidently, and had an attractively mysterious aura to him, despite his size. No blend of crude, dark humor had been too much for Janus. No sudden nihilistic or existential statements were too outlandish. Remus really felt a resonance with this person like he'd never felt before. He should have known it wouldn't last, because they were all the same. Remus should have known when Janus suggested visiting his place on their fourth date, but no. Remus would rather stick his head in the sand and pretend Janus wouldn't try to get them both wet. That was what it was all about in the end. Remus had learned to sense it and anticipate it in the way Janus murmured something in Remus's ear and went to sit on his lap. The weight of him on Remus felt suffocating, despite his size. Remus chuckled nervously as he felt Janus drag his hands around his waist, trailing kisses down his neck and up his chin. He knew where this was going. He should just rip the bandage off so it wouldn't hurt so much. Hey, Remus stammered, trying to wiggle out of Janus's clinging to him. He didn't lift his head nor meet his eyes, and Remus started to feel that anxiety-inducing overstimulation of his sensitive skin that made him want to shed from it. Jan. He tried and failed to pull his mind away from the gutter, and he shouldn't blame Janus for that. That was natural. Remus was the weird one. Janus wouldn't want to be with a weird one like him anyway. As soon as he would shed and show his true colors, Janus. It felt awfully formal and awkward, like the first time they met, when Remus called him that. Janus must have noticed the shift of tension in the air and pulled away a bit. His beautiful brown eyes met Remus's, and it almost had him choke on his words. Janus tilted his head, some of his blonde hair falling across his face. Remus would stand by the fact that Janus could earn money as a model if he wanted to. He was smoking hot. Oh, right. Someone like him couldn't say that. Couldn't even think that. Remus's breathing accelerated a bit, and he broke out in a sweat. His hands rested on Janus's arms to try and keep them from touching him anymore. His body shivered from discomfort. Janus frowned a bit, understandably so, and Remus wouldn't turn that frown upside down if he wanted to. He did want to, but he wouldn't. He knew that. He sighed shakily. I wanted to... Remus bit his lip, repressing the shaking in his voice. Fuck. Why was Janus so much fun? Why did Remus have to go and ruin his own fun again? He shook his head. He had to focus. I wanted you to know that you're the best, Janus smirked, and it almost had Remus cracking a smile too. Janus knew how to flirt, how to compliment, how to get someone turned on. Remus was really gonna ruin this for him, wasn't he? The funniest, the hottest, the boldest person in the room. With a grin, Janus squeezed Remus's waist a little, and Remus's heart dropped. Already knew that, he said, before his eyes trailed to his lips again. No, this was where it had to stop. The further it went, the more it would hurt. And Remus didn't want to hurt Janus more than he had to. No, He took a deep breath and stiffened on the couch. I'm Ace. Silence. Holding his breath, Remus watched as Janus's expression fell and morphed into something unreadable. For now. Maybe it wouldn't hurt as much if Remus could anticipate how he would react. What are you, a prude? What's that? Yeah, no, that doesn't exist. That's cute. Now stop making up excuses. There's no way you can be Ace with me. Somehow, Remus had trouble imagining Janus saying any of that, but maybe that was just another sign that he really started to like him. Fuck, this was going to hurt. That's asexual, Remus elaborated shakily, in case you haven't. Oh, I've heard of that, Janus replied softly, nodding a bit. His eyes averted from Remus's gaze as if he was thinking of the most effective way to tell Remus to fuck off, figuratively. It's a shame you just ruined our fun. Yeah, that sounded like something Janus would say. Remus swallowed and felt his skin itch. He hoped Janus would just rip off the Band-Aid quickly, but he didn't. Huh, Janus huffed, before dropping his shoulders and sitting upright to look Remus in the eyes again. He shrugged and said, okay. Remus's mouth opened a little, but no words came out. But, he stuttered, chuckling a little in disbelief. But, you know, I mean, what that means is that you don't want to have sex with me. Again, Janus looked at him with a quizzical look, as if Remus was the stupid one. Well, yes, he was the stupid one, the one who always ruined the fun. Yes, I know that. Remus let his head drop, and nervously avoided looking at the way Janus had spread his legs across his lap, as to not give him any ideas that this was just a joke, a trick, an excuse. Remus waited for Janus to mock him, like they all did, but he didn't. Okay, he said, one small word that didn't even register with Remus at first. Okay, Janus repeated, and that was what made Remus tilt his head back up to meet Janus's gaze. What? He whispered, as if he didn't know the meaning of the word. Well, he didn't, not in this situation. In this situation, it was never okay. But Janus just looked back and softly smiled. It's okay, he said. Then let's not. He shrugged about it. Remus couldn't understand that. But, he stammered again, shaking his head. Where was the rage? Where was the rejection? Remus knew where this was going. Aren't you now in the mood for... Janus sighed a bit. Did I look that thirsty? He rolled his eyes before the little smirk adorned his face again. I mean, I guess I am. Was. But what's the fun in having sex with someone who doesn't want to? Remus couldn't understand that. He couldn't understand what made Janus this indifferent. Where was his disappointment? Why did he not keep trying? If you don't want or feel the need to have sex with me... Janus's hand slid down Remus's arms, and instinctively it had him tensing up again. But then Janus gently intertwined his fingers with Remus's. Then I will respect that. It's that simple, he said. And Remus frowned. He scoffed even. He knew how this was always going to end. It's not simple, he said and shook his head. But I can touch you if you... No. Janus squeezed his eyes a little. Maybe it just took a while for him to get upset. It's okay, he repeated. But Remus didn't stop. The rage would come. It always did. You think I'm a prude, he said with a lopsided smile. But Janus shook his head. You think I'm joking. Remus chuckled a little, the pitch of his voice shifting all over the place. But Janus shook his head. You must be joking, Remus scoffed once more, but it also made it harder for him to swallow the sobs clogging up his throat. You're always all sarcastic and shit, so... No, I'm not. Janus squeezed Remus's hands and locked eyes with him. Remus, it's okay. But Remus shook his head. You're not... His voice broke under the pressure of resisting the urge to cry. "You're not angry?" "No," Janus replied, his expression softening and his brown eyes glistening like they were smiling at him. "It's okay. It's okay." Remus still felt like everything he said could detonate a bomb in Janus, and it made it harder and harder to keep the tears in his eyes. "But we're not gonna—" "It's okay." Janus nodded, before looking Remus up and down. He must have fucked up terribly at keeping his composure. "You're a fucking joke." Janus shuffled, then tried to lift himself off Remus's lap. "I can't believe you fucking led me on like that." Remus felt something in him panic. "Have you just been lying to me?" He whimpered and hummed in denial. He'd never lied. He'd never used it as an excuse. He'd never led anyone on to reject them. He never meant to hurt anyone's feelings. He just wanted to be true to himself, true to them, true to his feelings, or lack thereof. And the truth was, he didn't want to lose Janus. Out of everyone he had lost, he couldn't stand the thought of losing Janus and severing that connection. So selfishly, he yanked on Janus's arms to pull him back onto his lap. Janus's eyes widened in surprise, and he gasped a little. His eyes met Remus's. Remus didn't know where he was going with this, but he felt like he had to keep asking. "It's okay?" he asked. His voice was smaller than before. Janus's gaze softened, and his thumbs stroked Remus's knuckles. "It's okay," he said. Remus choked on his words, and a sob escaped his throat soon after. "Are we okay?" His heart was racing, his hands were sweating, his lungs were being suffocated, but then Janus gently released one hand from Remus's grip and cupped his face. He leaned forward just a little, not too much to be uncomfortable. Somehow, Remus knew he didn't need to be uncomfortable. Janus smiled with his lips, with his eyes, with his everything. "We're okay," he murmured. It didn't take long for Janus to be catching and wiping the tears that rolled down Remus's cheeks after that. Ugly sobbing, Remus dropped his face on Janus's shoulder. He allowed Janus to embrace him, shush him, comfort him. But he wasn't ashamed. He wasn't uncomfortable. He wasn't lying. He was being true. He was being accepted. He had no idea where this was going, but he felt like he would be okay. Thank you all for listening. Again, this story is Wherever This Is Going, It's Going to Be Okay by Lost in Scribbles. This is such an important story to me. It has touched my heart in many different ways, and I do hope y'all enjoyed it, and I hope you have a wonderful day.